Welcome to Data Center Dialogues. My name is Suyin Arts and I'm your host of this series of deep dives into the world of data centers. Today we will talk about sustainability and circularity in data center environments. And again, I have two amazing guests with me. The first one is Didier Appels. He's Managing Director at Circular IT Group in Belgium. And I have Tim Sterckx, who is Managing Partner at EpicHorizons. And I believe that Didier will bring hands-on experience with circular practices to our dialogue, and Tim will add that strategic insight into implementing sustainability in a very complex environment. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim, let me start with you. If I look around me and I hear people talk about sustainability, very often people see this as a cost rather than an investment. How are you able, when you talk to organizations, to flip that mindset?
I think it is indeed a cost. You don't have to be naive about the idea that sustainability and implementation of sustainability into your business is not a cost, but it is a cost that brings a lot of insights, a lot of knowledge. By looking into your company and see where the sustainability challenges are. So that's how we try to flip that idea that it is a cost, and not only a cost but also an advantage, knowing your company better by doing a sustainability exercise.
Mm-hmm. And how do you then think that circularity can be achieved if we really talk the context of a data center?
I think circularity is not starting in the data center itself.
Okay.
I think circularity starts earlier in the process, in the value chain, like at vendors, manufacturers of devices. So as a data center, you don't have to start thinking about circularity on your own, but start thinking about circularity through the entire value chain of your company.
Mm-hmm. Should you then talk more often to that value chain and to the partners you work with?
I think indeed you have to talk a lot with your, like they call it in sustainability, with your stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Didier, if I would ask you to describe what circularity really means to you personally, but also, of course, if we bring it back to IT infrastructure and data centers?
Well, for me personally, there are several things. I would like to tap in to what Tim is saying. We often use the word stakeholders, but I think of it more as an ecosystem. And you need to think about, indeed, the entire value chain. And for me personally, for data centers, but also for companies in general, when it comes to IT, it's about really thinking about what you want to do. Do not think about the device that you want to have. Think about what you want to do with that device. And maybe you can use a refurbished device, or maybe you can change your device, give it a second life, and then buy something new. But buy something that is future-proof, so you can use it for a longer period of time. So I think it's about thinking more about what you want to do, together with your stakeholders. Exactly, I do agree with that. So you can have a long-term solution for the tools that you have. And in data centers, obviously, we're talking about a lot of IT equipment, but it's also beyond the IT equipment. Think about energy. Think about lighting. Think about isolation of a building. It's the holistic view that we need to make sure that we do something that is future-proof. And future-proof means that it's good for the environment, but it also means that it's good for your return as an investor. It also means that it's good for your employees. It means that it's the right thing to do, for me personally.
And do you have the feeling that's a narrative that we should change a little bit more, that it's not yet the narrative that we see now in companies?
Good question. I think that we've been talking about sustainability a lot over the past years, and I think especially in Europe, sustainability became linked to everything that is reporting. It became a burden for some people, and I think we should flip that around. We should think about it more as making societies future-proof. If societies can thrive on their own, they're future-proof, and that's the ultimate sustainability. And if you zoom out a bit, if we look at it from the perspective of a country or even a continent, if we use circular economy, we use what we already have. That means that we're more independent from other continents. And I think that in today's geopolitical context, that is key. That is sustainability.
Okay. Tim, obviously there are some challenges that we need to tackle in the IT sector. I think Didier already touched upon some of them: reducing energy consumption, managing e-waste, also very important, and then of course. How are we using the resources? How can we improve efficiency? Do you see opportunities, and maybe do you have lessons learned on what works in an IT environment to tackle the challenges?
Yeah, I think IT is quite old school on sustainability and redesigning, for example, their servers by using other materials, other designs, optimizing the airflow in the servers. It's all very old school, all very 90s because it works. And I think a lot of companies, and not only the data centers, but like I already said, the manufacturers, the vendors, like we call it, they should look into the design, into the resources they use for their materials, which is then put in the data centers. So, yeah, e-waste wise, I think we can do a lot more with less resources. But yeah, there's little new designs today into very old school methodology on designing servers and stuff like that. And I think indeed, like Didier mentioned, it's not only energy use; it's indeed the entire shell of a data center that needs to be looked at. Lighting, sorry, the cooling, the building itself, because it's not only waste of materials, but there's a lot of waste, like energy waste, which can be optimized as well.
Mm-hmm. But you touch upon something I think interesting is, sometimes companies might say like, but we're up and running, things are going very well, we might be very 90s, but whatever. I mean, we earn money, things are... How are you able then to talk about that strategic importance of doing the maths and say like, okay, maybe we have to change something, and on a longer term we will be more effective, more future proof as a company?
Yeah, I think to measure is to know. So we always start with helping them gain insights on energy use, on the costs of that energy use. And by doing simulations of new builds within data centers, we can show them that they will save a lot of money, and then it becomes interesting for companies to change to a newer build or newer model of implementation of new products.
Mm-hmm. Didier, we're talking already a little bit about circularity. Do you have any real hands-on experience of cases that you saw in practice where this circular idea really became a certain reality in an existing data center?
Obviously, I think that well, both for data centers and for companies in general, what we see is a lot of companies that think about a second life for their used devices.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of interesting thoughts around that actually come from the people within the companies, within the data centers themselves. They want to commercialize their used assets. Sometimes we also see companies, if they have end user devices, that want to convert them to an advantage for their employees by refurbishing them for an employee program of some sort. That's good. That's, I think, future proofing, because you're helping your employees, you're making them part of your ecosystem. But I also see companies that take other examples that really go next level when it comes to, for instance, energy, or for instance, thinking alongside with partners on employing a device as a service model, for instance. So really calculating what they would need in the future and then renting what they need instead of buying it, so they can keep it up to date and be more agile. I see a lot of companies that change that idea as well. We do not need to own a device. We need to have access to capacity. I also think of some data centers that actually use refurbished devices as a backup plan. That's also something that's quite interesting. So a lot of ideas come, and I think that it's interesting to have an open discussion about it, an exchange of practices between clients and suppliers, but maybe also between companies that could be considered competitors. We're all in this together, and we can enrich each other. We can enrich the debate if we just share the thoughts and maybe the challenges we also live. So
Is that
a lot can be done.
Is that a hard challenge to make that happen, to make those competitors talk to each other and try to indeed understand we're all in this together, we're all living on this planet Earth, let's try to be successful and share practice? Or is that a key role for you as Close the Gap, where you are able to be, let's say, the middleman between those companies?
Good question. As managing director of the circularity group, I think that in Belgium we try to be the middleman indeed between different companies, different entities. I try to convince companies to work together with initiatives like Close the Gap to donate their used IT assets for the good cause or to Digital for Youth. But I also try to talk to companies and convince them of choosing reuse. And yes, that can be done with us, but it can also be done with one of my competitors. There are so many devices out there. We need several companies to tackle these devices, to process these devices, to give them a second life. We need a level playing field. Not everybody is buying into our story, but maybe they will buy into the story of one of my competitors. And at the end of the day, I want them to think about reuse.
Mm-hmm. Tim, if we think about green design, what should be the biggest focus in that space?
Yeah, I think looking at green design, you have to look at the resources you use, and do that have to be new materials, new servers. For example, you can maybe use or reuse older equipment that can perfectly still do the job. Green design is it's also some terminology that is often used within green IT, but I think you have to look at the life cycle of a product and not only into the green design or the redesign of products. And I think earlier, I think in early 2000, I'm sorry, data centers were built, and I hope it's not, but then back then, data center were built and not fully equipped with materials. A lot of data centers within Europe, mostly also Scandinavia, the buildings are half empty most of the time, and when they're full, there's a lot of old equipment that's not used, of not have been used a lot. So I think you have to look at it. If you really need the top-notch devices, you have to look at green design, renewable or sustainable resources, and also sustainable procurement. But do you really? I think you have to ask yourself the question often, and not only in data centers, but in a broader concept as well. Do you really need that type of IT setup? Because it's often oversized, and you can do the same with less. And green design is looking at new devices most of the time. And I think the reuse of devices is very important to save our planet, because there's more yeah materials on the waste, then there's still some resources in the ground, so to say. So you have to reuse the devices, the materials we already have, and reuse them. And I think, like Didier is doing, reuse some devices that are perfectly fine to still use for certain types, like backups.
Do it more than for example, what you say now is, for the moment we still have enough resources. We all hear that one day we will not have the resources anymore, but let's not wait until that is really happening.
We're already there, so yeah.
Yes, but do we talk about that enough to say that we are already there, and that it's very important to start thinking about how are we going to reuse them? Because it seems maybe more easy business case to say, okay, let's just replace the assets. And
I think it's interesting. I think we know it, but we don't realize it enough. And to tap into what you're saying, Tim, it's true. If you walk into a data center or in any other building that has an office, they're very often half empty. They either have they sometimes have a lot of old equipment in them that's no longer used, but we keep it because we might use it
just
someday,
in case.
just in case. Or it's filled with new equipment that we might need someday, and then we end up realizing that we don't need it. You would be surprised how many new, unused, unopened boxes we get from IT companies, or from companies in general, or from data centers, because they thought they might need it once. But that's not making sense to me. Just think about what you need instead of what you want. And if you just use what you need exactly after a thorough analysis, you will see that you will be able to save money because you buy less equipment or you rent less equipment. You're making more sense in your operations, and you're able to renew quickly when it's needed to renew or when it's needed to update. So it's making your business more agile, and that's again future-proofing your business, provided that everything's there. And I think we need to start making this future-proof decision the default decision. If that makes sense.
Yes, of course, that makes sense. In my opinion, that seems very, very logic to think about continuity and to be future proof. If we think about regulations, a lot of people are complaining, new regulations, we're in Europe, more regulations all the time. How are we going to be able to have the data, to be able to give the data that we need also to our stakeholders? Do you see that as a big challenge, or do you see that rather being an opportunity to open the discussion with possible key players and specifically data centers?
Yeah, I think regulations and reporting, regulations as well, like CSRD, I think it's still important. And by knowing and understanding your data, you can implement change within your company. And until I think 5 years ago, a lot of companies and also a lot of data centers within Europe were just doing their thing because that's the business model that works for 20, 30 years now, and why change our vision? And I attended a data center conference in the Nordics once, and I was speaking to a lot of data center owners, and they were telling me, and that was post-COVID, post-Ukraine war, and the high energy costs that came with it. And they just told me, we're not going to change our business model because we make money by using energy, because we sell the cost of the energy to our end users. So the data center, the people, the companies that use the data centers. And 2 years later, everything changed because the energy bills were rising, the costs were rising, and then the same people said, hey Tim, we spoke a few years ago. You were talking about energy savings. How can we save energy? Because our business model isn't working anymore. So you see the the drive comes from always a money perspective and a cost savings perspective. And by, like I already said, by understanding your company better and see possible gains and cost saving possibilities by, for example, optimizing data center energy, then they will move into a new business model or new build within the data center, because they know on the long term we will save money and become more sustainable as well. So it's 2 for 1 idea.
Yeah, I like to tap into that. I think it's indeed, if you look at how decisions are made, it's very often linked to costs or the return or the potential impact of an investment. But I like to link back to what you said about CSRD and about the reporting. I think we need to explain enough why certain reportings are requested. What's the reasoning behind it? Why are we following certain aspects of energy use? I was in the Netherlands yesterday, and what we can't imagine here in Belgium is already true in the Netherlands. There you can have power cuts. You have a limit to what you can consume as a company. So then sustainability and working with batteries and solar panels becomes key to be able to do your business at all. If you have to stop your business because you're out of energy, then, well, you're dead basically as a data center. So that changes the entire narrative. Why do we follow? Why do we measure? Because we want to know how much we consume. Why do we want to know how much we consume? Because we need to know as a society what we need in terms of energy supply. And that becomes, for data centers, critical, because if you look at the energy consumption, it's rising. If you look at the graphs, it's tremendous. It's frightening, to be honest. So we need to be very careful about what we do today, but also predict a bit tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, and be ready for that, and be ready for changes that we don't expect today, like power cuts.
Yeah, I think I just want to add, if you see what happened a few weeks ago or last week in Spain and Portugal.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a disaster. If that will happen here, I think 5 people were injured or even, I think, dead. So yeah, we need data. I think we need IT. We need data centers, of course. Data is all around us, and I think we have to understand better, and not only the people in the business of data centers, but also the end consumer, the people at home. Data is everywhere. For example, when I drove to this podcast, data was even on the panels on the streets telling me, there's a traffic jam of 50 minutes. That's also data. But where is it stored? Nobody knows. Where does it come from? What is the impact of one data set, 1 megabyte? Nobody knows. And I think by the rise of AI, for example, and the crazy use of AI for just stupid things, that puts a lot of pressure onto the grid, onto the data centers, and we have to optimize that as well. And that comes, I think, that starts with awareness for everyone on what is data and how can you use data better and optimize the use of everything. For example, file sharing within a company. It has a huge impact if you use the proper file sharing solutions like SharePoint. That's a lot of data optimization on storage alone, on security as well, instead of just emailing everyone the same file over and over again. So
I love that when you see a document being shared and it's version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 7B, 7B2. Use an online document. That's so easy, and it's the same with research.
But a lot is then in communication and in leadership, because I think as a leader you should then communicate about the fact, do you know what you're doing and what you're doing wrong? But if everybody is doing, well, we always did it this way and this is how it works in our company, but we do it another way, then are we enough aware about the communication, which is very obvious to, I think, the three of us, the things we tackle upon. But I see so many people not even being aware about, why can I not do it my own way? I prefer this way of working.
I agree, and I think we need some strong visuals to be able to really reach people. And there's one visual that I like to use. We all have a smartphone, right?
Yes.
So we charge our smartphone, let's say, at least once a day.
I wish.
Well, for me it's two, but that's because you're a heavy user or you need a new phone. Or a refurbished one, but I can also help you there. But the thing is, if you charge your phone, that takes a certain amount of energy. If you create one funny image with AI, that takes about the equivalent of 60 phone charges. So one orange man in a funny suit, that's 60 images. How many strange or funny images have we created? And how many of those are actually needed or had a real, tangible added value for society? Think about that. Now think about making a movie with AI. That's times, I don't know, 100 in when it comes to energy consumption or data usage. And that's the thing. We use these things because they're funny, but not because they're needed. I think we need AI for very complex questions, but not for making funny pictures. We don't need AI to find the best way to drive to this podcast. You have very simple apps that can help you as well in finding the way. And that's just one simple example. And I think that we can create awareness with tangible stories and examples, and not with a negative message, or with reporting all over the place, but just with some tangible examples, making it clear that you as a person or you as a company have an impact, and that you can change your impact for the good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I want to add, I think AI is not bad. There's an example that AI can discover breast cancer in a very, very, very early stage. So that's very interesting, and I hope we can build as much as data sets we can to help people there. But do we really need the data centers to be stored, for example, with a lot of pictures, like I always said, of people in concerts and conferences, and even of their cats and dogs, and because now everything is in the cloud, and I think nobody knows, because we know, of course, but what is the cloud? Nobody knows what the cloud is, but the cloud is a data center, and people are working on their smartphone or on their laptops, but they don't know how much energy they are using by just using AI, for example, for, make me a perfect Barbie doll. I think we have to create awareness, thought leadership within companies. We did a study once that by implementing or creating awareness in a company by just measuring the impact of online usage within Microsoft, by, okay, you sent so many emails, you shared so many files, and at the end of the day your impact is so many grams of CO2 polluted. By doing that, just do measuring and letting the people working know at the end of the day what their impact is on carbon emissions. They started implementing best practices on IT, sustainable IT use, and within the first 6 months, the carbon emissions dropped 15%.
Wow.
So we need indeed thought leadership.
And sometimes it can be so simple.
Yeah, indeed.
Right?
It can be simple, and sometimes it's about stating the obvious. A client of ours is doing something interesting. They actually, when they hand out new laptops to their employees, they include a note saying, hey, you're just the first user of this device. Please take care of this device because somebody else will use it after you. And the interesting thing is they've been doing this for a couple of years, and they see now that in their ticketing services, where they follow the repairs that they need to do on these laptops, they actually saw a decline in number of tickets being made.
Wow.
Because people actually took care of their device. Yeah. And it's just stating the obvious. People don't realize, and I don't want to belittle people, but people don't realize that there's a second life for their laptop. But if you just make it obvious, people do take that into consideration.
Yeah, I think it's a very good tip to state something that is obvious, but that sometimes we need to refresh in
Yeah,
in our minds.
exactly, and make it obvious that you can have an impact. I love the way that you talk about images. How many pictures of cats would there be out there on data centers? Trillions.
You don't want to know.
But how many of those do we actually need? We need a couple of them because they're our beloved pets, but do we need all of them? I don't think so. So just some common sense, I think, would really help out here.
Didier, if there would be one mandatory rule that you could implement, imagine you have the power to implement one mandatory rule specifically for data centers. If we talk about sustainability, what would be the rule you implement as from tomorrow?
It's a good question, and I have to limit myself to one.
If you're that creative, go ahead. What would be the first one?
The good question. I think the first would be to think about the capacity that you need and not about the devices you want. So reuse is possible within data centers. So whatever you have, think about a second life, but also think about what you can do with used devices. I think a lot of good devices are out there in case of data centers. If you think about servers, think about the racks of servers. We get kilograms of racks in. Those are perfect for reuse. So think reuse first. That would make a big impact. And then if you think about reuse, think about sustainable energy consumption. That would be a very close second. And there I did it. I made two into one, sort of.
Cool. Tim, do you see an opportunity for more partnerships between, let's say, operators, between governments, and between suppliers, if we really want to build this really sustainable ecosystem? Because at the end of the day, that's what we need to create.
Yeah, I think transparency is key in all sustainability challenges. But in reality, it's quite hard to close the gap between all those companies and start a dialogue on, okay, how can we help each other? For example, I already mentioned the power outage in Spain and Portugal. There's this idea that it comes from there is too much renewable energy put on the net, and the energy grid wasn't ready for it, and it crashed. So that can happen here as well, because our energy grid isn't that great as well. But we can easily solve that by having a discussion with all the data center owners in this region and see how they can use that overcapacity on renewable energy to use that for example, periods of high demand of energy use within that data center in certain times. So that can be a very interesting dialogue that can happen with the energy operators and the data center owners on how can we store that energy in our battery packs within the data center, battery fields, and how can we use that renewable energy when we need that energy, when there's an outage or when there's a high demand of energy or server capacity. Yeah,
that's really key, and I would like to link it to one of the items that was in the news today in Belgium. We need to look for ways to keep the energy that we have so we can use it when we need it. Exactly. The same applies to the rain and to water. We have a drought now, but we had a lot of rain a couple of weeks ago, but we let it all go to waste. So think about just, again, keeping what we have and use it when we need it. It's really that simple, I think. But then we need the capacity to do so. That's another thing.
And we need people that are willing to go that extra mile and say, let's keep it simple. What can we do indeed, instead of creating images with AI?
Yeah, we need a dialogue, I think, and we need people working together and transparency, and there's no shame in saying we don't know, but we want to help as well. But everyone is, even within one company, some departments are working on their own island and not looking to the other departments on how to optimize it, because we're now talking about data centers as a data center operator, data center owner, data center companies. But within a lot of big companies, there's also a data center. And yeah, that's being used like forever, and there's no innovation. And you see that a lot of teams within certain companies are looking, we have to optimize our data center, we have to rebuild, we have to look at the energy use, we have to look at the cooling and stuff like that. And then there's another team, and they were, and it happened in reality, so it's an example that I came across, and the other team said, we're gonna implement AI everywhere. So the optimizations that were done by the other teams,
they
disappeared by just implementing AI. And when we asked, and why AI, they said, but we don't know, but everybody's using AI nowadays. So you have to close or start conversations between companies, and between departments within certain companies as well.
So again,
and dare to ask why, and I love the reference that you make. We do things with AI because everybody's doing it, but
why?
Again, why? Do you need it? You want it? Okay, that's another story. But do you need it? Is it necessary? Is it useful? Does it add value? So I think we need to ask those questions and make sure that we put everybody in their strength, as we say in Dutch. So indeed, companies that have their own data center, some of them are very good at it, and I see some other companies really struggling with managing the hardware, with optimizing the use of for instance, the energy in their data center. So I think that not everybody can manage the data center professionally, so leave that to the specialists, and I need specialists for something else as well, and I hope some consider us as a specialist for used IT devices. But if we all use our strengths, I think we can do more as an ecosystem, as a group of stakeholders than when we just do it on our own.
That's a nice way to almost end this podcast, because I still have one question for both of you. Question that I ask all the guests in this podcast, and that's the following question. I'm going to ask you to respond like in 1 or 2 sentences max. I'm going to challenge you a little bit. What would be the one belief about data centers you think we need to challenge more often? What would it be? Who goes first?
Okay, I'll try and keep it short. I think we have to challenge, why do we need data centers in this region?
Good.
Nice one. I think we need to challenge the idea that we already know what an optimized data center is.
Interesting. Thank you, gentlemen. It was great talking to both of you, specialists that are open for communication and for sharing knowledge with me, with each other, and with all the people that are listening to us. So thank you so much, Tim. Thank you so much, Didier.
Thank you, Cian. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for tuning into Data Center Dialogues. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe. And you can also access all our resources and episodes at Data Center University. Empowering data center knowledge. Stay curious, stay inspired, and we'll see you next time.